Hola, welcome to Season 3 of More Than Rice and Beans, the Mother-Son podcast where we introduce you to our favorite Latinx creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs.
I'm Miguel, a mechanical engineer PhD student at Johns Hopkins University, funded by a NASA fellowship.
And I'm his mom, Tania. I'm a chef, educator, and proud New Yorican.
This season on More Than Rice and Beans, we've got, well, a lot more for you. More amazing guests, more ridiculous sidebar conversations, and more meaningful discussions on what it's like to navigate this world as a Latinx person.
We're so excited you're joining us for this incredible season, along with our all-star lineup of guests. Get ready, because this time it's way more than rice and beans. Welcome back to our third season of More Than Rice and Beans, your favorite Latinx mother-son podcast. I'm Tania, the mom. I'm also a chef and entrepreneur based in the Bronx, New York.
I'm Miguel, the son. I'm a PhD student studying aerospace engineering at Johns Hopkins University. Thanks for joining us today. If you haven't had the chance yet, make sure you subscribe to the show because we have some amazing guests this season.
That's right, including today's guest, who I invited to the show without telling Miguel, as a surprise for him. Dave Cortes, a sculptor from Brooklyn, who has been making action figures, toys, and collectibles for some of the biggest names in the world for over 2 decades. He's the artist behind some of the best-loved DC collectibles and the 75th anniversary Captain America statue. I am so excited to welcome Dave Cortes to the show.
Hello, my name is Dave Cortes. Nice to be here with you guys and talk about 25 years of toy making so far.
Wow, 25 years? That's longer than I've been alive now.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, yep. I guess I started my career in 1998 officially, so closing in on that 25-year mark.
Yeah. Yeah, that's literally the year that I was born. So my life embodies your sculpting experience. Oh, so I have a ton of questions for you, but before I bombard you, let's start with some of the basics of what you do. So what's your official job title?
So in the toy industry, I go as a sculptor, toy designer. But in general, I'm just, I consider myself an artist, work in a lot of different mediums. And, sculpture is probably the main one for me, though.
And how'd you get started with that?
Well, it's an interesting thing because I just answered an ad, that was in this toy magazine that, it's a comic digest. And they just had different ads for the upcoming comics. It would come out monthly. And there was an ad for a toy designer. A company called McFarlane Toys was creating some of the most detailed figures at the time. And they were doing so well that they placed an ad in this magazine. And I just answered the ad.
Oh, wow. And then, so you were already sculpting before that ad, or
Yeah,
okay.
Actually, I had been sculpting already. I started first painting. Wasn't great at that. And I moved to clay. And once I found, I touched clay, it felt like the right medium for me. And I felt like I could get my ideas out. So I just started going crazy, sculpting all different things. And so I actually had a little portfolio. So when I saw the ad, I was like, you know what? I have some sculptures to show. I had some strange sculptures. It wasn't exactly what they were asking for. It was a little bit more urban, whatever was kind of interesting to me at the time, Mike Tyson or Tupac Shakur. So I had little sculptures that I made of these characters, and I decided, you know what, it's kind of related. It's not toy-like, but there's still some similarities there. And I submitted the portfolio with that work. And sure enough, they called me, which was really nice, and gave me a shot. And I was able to prove to them that I could sculpt their product because they gave me a job as an opportunity, which was pretty cool. So I got paid, and it was also like a test.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you always been a comic fan?
You know what? It's strange because comics has always been a part of my life, but on the visual side of things. So when I was young, I would always go into the comic store and buy the magazine, the comics, but not for the stories, more for the artwork because I love
Yeah.
the comics, the covers, and I either wanted to draw them at the time, and then later I started attempting to sculpt these things. But I have to admit, and I'm a little ashamed to, that a lot of these characters I didn't even know the origins or the stories behind them until I was much older, and I actually started working doing this stuff. And the art directors would basically teach me about these characters, and it was exciting because I was looking at these same characters in a different way.
Yeah, and then did knowing the origin story of those characters and learning more, did that help you in your sculpting at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. It also had a lot to do with having great art directors because they were so passionate about it, and when they would talk about this stuff, it seemed like such an important thing, that I felt like I had to express the same kind of enthusiasm when I make the action figure of this iconic character. So knowing the background and also an art director that really was passionate about it was the result of a lot of that earlier work.
Yeah, I can imagine that that would help a lot. Just also to kind of imbue a sort of passion as well.
It sure does, and it's like these are mostly the Marvel characters. And the other thing about them is that the Marvel characters had such like normal backgrounds in a way, like
Yeah,
I didn't expect that.
like Captain America, a kid from Brooklyn.
Yeah, and like Spider-Man, just
Yeah.
this high school kid in Queens, like I was like, wow, this is actually like more familiar than I thought. Had I read these things when I was younger, I would have, like maybe identified more with it. But it was kind of weird that, like these characters are so iconic in the visual for me. And then starting to read, I'm like, wait, they're talking about my neighbor, my, like the borough, just next door. It's pretty wild that it was all really taking place here, at least in the Marvel, universe.
I have a question for you. Which is harder, drawing or sculpting?
Well, I think that it depends on the person. For me, sculpting came a lot easier. Like when I was drawing, right, and painting, like I love, like the fact that you could do it anywhere, right? Like you can sit somewhere with a pencil and paper and just start drawing. But I really like struggled with things like foreshortening, anatomy, uh, perspective in drawing. And I think that what I wanted to focus on more was characters and anatomy. So I didn't really care about a whole like composition. I just wanted to work on the figure. So when I started sculpting, I could just concentrate on that. I didn't have to worry about color. I didn't have to worry about shading. It was just forms. And for me, I would say it was easier to sculpt something. To this day, like I would much rather sit down and make a whole sculpture than actually draw because I could get my ideas out better that way, in 3D. But I wouldn't say necessarily that'd be the case for everyone because I know people that I'm fascinated by these people too that they just fill up sketchbooks like crazy because they can just get the ideas out. And I envy that too because I feel like with the speed of drawing, if I can have that speed, I would get so many more ideas out because the sculpture process takes a lot longer.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask, do you have you ever like how do you come up with the sculpture? Do you ever sketch it out first or do you start off with a sculpture like a draft sculpture, I guess?
Yeah, there's a little bit of both. Like sometimes, like the idea comes immediately, like of the composition or the dynamic pose or what I'm trying to like, like the scene I'm trying to build, right? And I might sketch it because I want to remember these things, but the sketch is more like that. It's just like a quick little like blueprint of like what I'm going to do. But in order to really see it, I just go right to clay, or these days digital. But the lately, as of late, I actually have been sketching more because, like, you know, mostly to remember what I want to do because they've get the my own personal work is a little bit more like complex. It's not just the figure. Like there's a bunch of different elements, and those ideas might come while I'm sitting in front of a cafe, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to forget this, so I start sketching. So lately, I actually been sketching a lot more, and I would say for my personal work, I sketch a lot more than I do for commercial work. There's no sketching involved for the commercial work. Just go right in.
Yeah, I guess for that they probably give you more of an concrete idea of what they want, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're pretty much getting the design finished, ready to go, and it's just my job to communicate that in 3D.
Hmm.
So I'm going to ask this question a bit early in the interview, but I want our guests to get a sense of who you are. Entonces, vamos a hablar de comida. Eres Latino, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Boricua?
Boricua, yeah.
Wepa!
Born and raised in Brooklyn, but families from Arecibo and Ponce.
Ah. And what is your favorite Latino dish and why?
Oh man, well, growing up, it was pasteles, 100%.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, that was. But like because they take so long to make, and
Have you ever tried to make it?
no, I wish. I mean, I kind of have an idea of the process,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, I've never, sat down and tried. I should one day. I'd
I
like to.
How
have
do
heard that it takes like forever though.
Yeah, it's like a day project, right?
Yeah.
would
And
you make
all.
it with your mom?
Yeah, I mean, like it's funny. My mother wasn't much of a cook. My aunt was, so I saw a lot of that, happening in the kitchen with my aunt, and and then of course it was like the extended family that would just gift us a bag of pasteles, and that was always an amazing time when you get that. But
Can
but
you describe the pasteles to us, the
oh
flavor? I
oh
mean,
yeah, well my
what?
my favorite had I like the chicken, I favored that over the pork at the time, and then my thing was I loved when there was olives in there, like a lot of olives, because that salty and the little bit of the sweet, from the masa was an amazing combination, and then I was young, so I couldn't get into the technical details of like what made it taste like it did, but there were like some amazing cooks and uh, around because we like I remember getting a bag of an amazing pastas.
So you haven't had a pastel in a while?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Ay, bendito.
Yeah, and my wife's mother, who's Colombian and Cuban. I'm sorry, she's Cuban. Her parents are Colombian and Cuban. She's an amazing cook, and I'm fortunate to still have access to Hispanic cooking, Latino cooking. So just she makes an amazing rice and beans, and that's got to be like a luxury these days, especially like with so little people cooking authentically like that, especially
Yeah.
well from where I am, in Park Slope, Brooklyn. That might be a
Yeah.
little harder to find maybe than the Bronx or something like that. The community is getting smaller and smaller.
Our Spanish community, Latino community
i
getting
feel like
smaller?
I feel like
Oh,
from when I grew up, yeah, I feel like a lot of people have moved away, and so you find, I mean, of course, growing up, we had, huge Cuban population, Puerto Rican, um, it's changed, and it's a little different now, but I just feel like the family and friends that I was growing up with there have all moved away, pretty much.
so they say that Puerto Ricans in Brooklyn gathered in a certain place, like that. It was a big community there. Which part of Brooklyn was it? Park Slope?
Well, it depends because like we were like South Slope, so we were between Sunset Park and Park Slope, and all most of my friends were Puerto Rican, but it was very diverse. There were Italians, Jewish, Black. It was very diverse. But Red Hook is where my family actually grew up, which is the neighborhood that I live in now. And Red Hook is like an interesting little, edge of Brooklyn. A lot of people have never even visited this area, and when they do come here, they're like amazed because it feels like you're not. I mean, you're so close to Lower Manhattan. We're just right across the water, but it
Hmm.
feels so different. It's a waterfront town, and my family, both sides grew up here in Red Hook. So I would say, for me, it was mostly Red Hook and Park South Slope. You know,
Huepa Boricua, pasteles.
Pasteles.
For people out there who don't know what pasteles are made with pork, adobo stuffing, encased with green plantain, and wrapped in banana leaves. And they taste amazing.
There's a lot of different fillings for pasteles too. It's not just pork. Like Dave mentioned that he likes the chicken. I've also seen some vegetarian ones with like vegetable fillings. I kind of want to try that
And
since my girlfriend's
chickpeas.
vegetarian, so I need to make sure that she gets to try something from the Puerto Rican side. Um, but yeah, I think is it just pork and chicken?
There's
There's probably
chickpeas
beef
too.
too, and there's
Yeah.
Yeah,
probably like ground beef probably.
yeah, I think beef too. Yeah, like I think the main component of it is the banana, right? The
Yeah.
masa,
Mhm.
and yeah, I guess they get a little more creative these days. But the banana leaf was a big,
Yeah, and then just
staple.
like like tied with the little
Yep.
knot. It's almost like a little present.
Yeah, and you know what? That's so crazy, right? Because there's so much labor in that. Like when you get
Yeah.
Yeah.
this, it's like you got a bag of these things that are all wrapped. And like there's no food really that's like that where, it has the banana leaf, there's that paper over it, and then it has this like little, tie and wow, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And then it was like $1.50, or something
Yeah.
like that. Probably even less.
A
And most
dollar
people,
fifty and it comes with its own container.
yeah, exactly. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, the original
Tax
Tupperware.
free.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so I definitely have to ask about this Captain America statue. So, what's the story behind the statue? Who commissioned it, and what was the reasoning behind it? Just tell us as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I want to inform people that I get people saying like, "Wait, this statue exists. Where is it?" And it's such a sad thing because it does exist. It's in a place where everybody can see it. It's at Liberty View Plaza in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, and Liberty View Plaza is an amazing building. It takes up an entire like block, and it was I think it was a World War I warehouse that or factory that made like all kinds of stuff for the war. So the story is very vague, but there's someone who wrote an article about it. But I think that the owner of the building liked it so much that he acquired it from Marvel. But the statue itself was commissioned by well, it wasn't commissioned. It was actually made by a company called Comic Cave in collaboration with Marvel. So Comic Cave actually produced this thing, got it casted in bronze. Um, I was hired to make the sculpture, and it was for me. It was treated as a regular job, which was a scary, scary moment because my studio and I, when we got the project, we are thinking that it's just a regular action figure size sculpture, 6 inches, 12 inches at max, right? And then we completed the job, and we didn't, do anything that was, like after the fact. We realized that, we approach every job the same way. We want to make it look great. We try to put all the details in there. But there was a scary moment where I got a phone call after the project was delivered from my studio, and we really didn't know what the final product was going to be. And the phone call was like, "Hey, do you want to come to Prospect Park for the opening ceremony of the Captain America bronze statue?" And I was like, wait, what? And then they were like, "Yeah, like this statue is going to be unveiled in Prospect Park, and you live in Brooklyn, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I was like, "Wait, it's going to be a statue, a bronze statue?" So I found out after the fact. So when they were telling me 13 feet tall, I was a bit horrified because I was like, man, like, did we focus on the right things? Because if you think about 13 feet, like now the focal point for the viewer is actually his shin and his boot. So then it's a whole different perspective. Now you're looking up at it. So there's this you know worm's eye view that can kind of distort the piece and make it look a little weird if the head might look too small. So all these like concerns were just like coming up at that moment. And so it was a big surprise because when we finally saw it at Prospect Park, the unveiling, we were like so happy with the final product. It was like wow, like you rarely get to see these sculptures that out of scale of 12 inches or whatever they call it, 1/6 scale. Um, but here now you're seeing this thing at 13 feet tall and in a material that is so like prestigious, like or
Yeah.
classical, right? Bronze, and I loved it. There were some people that weren't happy about having something like that in a public place because they thought it was like promoting these commercial products or whatever, Disney, whatever the case is. But it was only a temporary thing, and I think that these sculptures or these characters have surpassed, because you think about it, like they were. I'm kind of going through this right now. That's why it's kind of fresh in my mind. Where the sculpture of these iconic comic characters is a little bit different. It's not just like this is already time tested stuff. That statue was a 75th anniversary statue. Can you imagine that? So now that was a while ago now. So we might be closer to 80 years now. The artists involved in creating this were New Yorkers. So if you're thinking about just honoring a New York artist, it makes perfect sense to have like their character. We do it. They've done it for like Dr. Seuss and his characters and stuff like that, or um, uh, Lewis Carroll, with Alice in Wonderland figures. To me, it's no different. It's a worldwide iconic character that's not going anywhere. So I don't think there's any harm in having a statue. That it embodies a lot more than these corporate companies or whatever it is that they're trying to say. That's not really uh, the cool part of it. Putting it in a public place. There's some liability issues as well. But currently we're working on a similar project, but for another iconic character.
Oh, really? Is there? I'm guessing you can you not tell us about what it is?
No, actually, I can tell you, and I want to spread the word because Spider-Man is probably a lot more. Well, he's the number one character out of all superhero characters worldwide. And there's like a he's from Queens, and so you have to have a Spider-Man statue in Queens, and it's such a positive character. He's a he's a he's a young teenager or whatever, at least started that way in Queens, and we want to kind of do a similar thing. We want to have a bronze statue in Queens of Spider-Man. So we already are finished with the design. We have tons of support, but as you can imagine, there's a little bit of red tape with getting like site approvals. Um, so there's a site set up called SpidermanForestHills.com. And if anybody thinks it's a cool project, they can just go onto the site and leave a comment because this is only this is a grassroots effort here. So if people think it's cool and want to show support, just leave a comment. We could certainly use that kind of support. Just saying it's a cool idea.
Say the link again.
Uh, it's SpidermanForestHills.com.
Okay. I'll
And
make sure to leave a comment too.
Yeah, me too.
please, thank you, and yeah, spread the word, and hopefully there'll be a time where you can come to New York and go to every borough and find a statue, a superhero statue. And I don't know, some people may not like that idea, but I think a lot of people would. And I think, look, at the end of the day, it's great for the kids at a time where they're taking down statues because they're controversial. I don't think these things are. I think these things bring, get people excited, you know, uh, passing the torch. Most of these collectors are like now, older, my age, pushing 50 and older, and they have kids and they want to kind of like
Leave a
experience these
legacy.
things with them.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
it
Do you
certainly
do
is.
you get to have your name on the statue or something or some
On the
part of the statue?
Spider-Man statue, absolutely. Yeah, like the Marvel statue, the Captain America, that was one of those like things where the design was already introduced to us, and we were just hired to make the model for it. I mean, we did like interpret certain things with like the dynamic pose and the wrinkles and the clothes, but it was very limited. But the Spider-Man statue, that's 100% me. Like I wanted to make a tribute statue to the two artists that were involved with creating this, which is Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and this is their baby. So basically, Spider-Man is hanging on a New York City lamppost, and it has two street signs, and it says Stanley Street and Steve Ditko Way,
No
because it's a
way.
tribute to those guys. And like, so technically, I don't look at it as a Spider-Man statue. It doesn't say Spider-Man. Of course, it's so iconic that you would know right away, but it's more like a tribute to those artists. And this will have my name on it somewhere, because I mean, look, I this is all a volunteer effort for
Yeah.
everybody. The person spearheading this project, by the way, I want to just mention him, Larry Eng. He's an amazing guy, and he's so passionate about this, and he's taken this cause on, and he's really working hard to try to make this happen, and connecting a lot of dots and raising the money privately. So like I said, we're just looking for the support of words, just to so that when we present this, that we have, hey, like, hey, people really want this.
Hmm.
So that's what the site is set up to hopefully help us with.
And how did I mean with the Captain America statue, did that like change how like did more people start contacting you? How did that change your career and your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like those who know about it, well, actually, look, I'll put it this way: it's been amazing because I've gotten contacted by people that like has have done their own research, because that one doesn't have my name on it and doesn't have my studio. That was a studio effort, and I wish we had a studio credit on it, to be honest. But it doesn't have it. But people, they're so resourceful, so they'll just do their own investigating, and then all of a sudden I get a call, and
Yep.
they're like, "Hey, you're the guy that did," and that's actually how I met Larry Eng. He called me because he, found Captain America statue, and he thought about, hey, I'd like to do this again, and he contacted me based on that work. So I mean, I wanted to do this because I think it's a worthy project, and but I'm also grateful of these opportunities, because like, man, I think I'm probably the only, at least in Brooklyn or New York, that has any kind of action figure as a bronze statue. So I feel grateful for that opportunity and honored, and it has done great things for me.
And so now moving on to just a bit more about kind of what you like to do on the side. Outside of these like Marvel and DC like big projects, are there any like sculptures or anything that you like to do just for yourself?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, so with sculpture, like I have this thing where I just feel like I need to constantly learn a new method or a new medium. So, like I never restricted myself to just like one thing and one style. So if you look at my work, which can be found on cortesstudio.com, a wide, diverse range of styles, from cartoony to realistic to, comic book, and then my own personal work goes beyond that. Like I have this stuff that I'm really interested, which is, like portraits of people that maybe, you wouldn't really expect that I would, sculpt. And then subject matter that is something that is of my own interest, and not like, like studying faces when they get hit by a boxer, and you take away the fist, and what does that rippled face look like, but I wanted to make that sculpture in a material that you don't think of as fluid, like wood, like a hardwood. So I have a series of sculptures where there are these wood heads that are completely deformed because they've been impacted by a fist. And I call that the phantom punch series because you don't see the actual punch, but you see the result. And they're all made of uh, you know, a range of hardwoods. And that's the kind of exploration I like to do with sculpture.
And I'm curious, how do you feel about, I guess, the advent of 3D printing and how that's continuing to really grow recently?
Yeah, I'll tell you, ironically, like when I first started showing people my work 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when it was related to toys, people would always say, "Oh, I didn't think somebody sculpted this. I didn't think this was done by hand," because I would show them the process, like for any action figure that was on a shelf, and a lot of people didn't understand like that was like a hand sculpted thing. Now we kind of are doing it the way people sort of imagined. They thought machines were involved, maybe not computers so much, but once again, I like the challenge of a new medium, especially if I could make sculpture in a different way. So when I started to learn about, these digital programs and 3D printing, I was completely intrigued and I wanted to know more, and I dove right into it. So this is like 15 years ago now, or maybe like 13 years ago. And I just kind of dove right in. And to me, I just wanted to see what it's like to create on the computer. And a lot of people hated it because, and as you can imagine, you invest so much time with your tools, your little, because we made a lot of our handheld tool, the clay tools. You couldn't just buy them, so you'd make things for different reasons. Making eyes, you have a little tool, and then suddenly somebody's saying, "Give up all that and work on the computer." But I like that challenge. I like let me see if I could do it here and I can do it there. I'll still do it. And then at the time, 3D printing was really, really expensive. But I know with technology that it's just a matter of 5 years that this is going to be affordable. This is going to be accessible. It's going to be everywhere. So I mean, I always feel like with technology, I think everything is possible. So I at the time when people were saying, "Oh, what do you think? You're going to be able to do a job that way?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And there was a lot of doubt. Like I remember colleagues telling me, "Oh, you're going to the dark side," because I was going to digital. Yeah, and at the time, I'm just like, I'm a big look. I love animation. I've always like that's where another like my heart is in animation. And this just allows me to do more of that stuff. So I accept it. I'm completely fine with it. I think that if you're a really good artist, you will shine no matter what medium you use. And these days, it's more common to use the digital tools and 3D printing. It's more practical. It makes more sense for the industry. Like now, when I look at the work that I did in the past out of, by hand, it's insane. I don't know how I did that work. And I'm talking about maybe at least 1,000 figures sculpted by hand. So it takes a lot longer with clay, and then there's changes and you have to go and, you kind of lose the record of the original clay model that might have looked amazing. But with digital, it's a file and you can save the stages. There's a lot of benefits. And I think for the industry, the commercial industry, it's the perfect tool. Personal work, you might want to explore a lot of other, like for example, the design I did for the Spider-Man statue. I actually did that in clay. I wanted to feel the attachment of this, like because I know the whole, outcome of, what the planned outcome is for this. I wanted to be as involved, immersed in this project as I could be, and that required me to go back to clay, and even sketching. There were a lot of hand
Nice.
sketches for that too, and
Nice. That must have felt really good.
it did. It felt good to, and also I wanted to finish it in digital, so it wasn't just finishing doing it in clay. It was like kind of do everything I'm doing now in this one piece, so that when I look at this, 20 years from now, I'm gonna remember because these things are like little capsules of memories for me. Like I
Yeah.
look at a piece and I remember a time. I remember how I did it. I remember what was going through my mind at the time. So this is how I want to remember this project.
And how is it being a Latino in this kind of field of work? Have you ever felt like left out, or have you ever felt like you kind of had to put yourself up a bit more to prove to people?
It's funny because like, you don't really like. There's not like any moment where I felt like, uh, that was there was any kind of discrimination over or whatever. If anything, I felt like it made me special. And a lot of like when I went to school, people were always, curious about where you're from, because School of Visual Arts was more like international, you know. And so like when people would come, meet at school and, they see your last name and they're wondering where you're from and, like the style of work, it looks different. Like I think that my uh, being a Puerto Rican from Brooklyn has really, like, I could see it in my work now. At the time, I didn't know. I was just doing what I thought. But the style, I've had people say, like, you got like a Brooklyn style, or, your work looks very, especially as international. They were like, your work looks very American, you know, whatever that means. But then if they were from the States, it'd be your work was very Brooklyn. And if they were from Brooklyn, your work is, urban, like and then it starts going down closer to, like your roots of, being Puerto Rican. But my personal work is more about that, like the commercial work doesn't really allow you to insert so much, that. But it happens. So the flavor just seeps in sometimes, I guess, and especially in the older work. The more current work is very strict. It's not like we have such liberties to like, redesign anything. Like these things are already established. If they're like video game characters, a lot of times they're already modeled and they don't want to change anything. They just want you to turn that into a toy. So the earlier work, there was a lot more freedom, and I had companies hiring me because they liked what I did and they were like, just make it cool. And I think that's where my background would play a part more than anything. And as far as the experience in the industry, I got to say that I noticed, like when I would find like really good work, I noticed like, it's another Hispanic person. I mean, not to say that there wasn't, like there was a lot of talented artists, but I was always like noticing the Hispanic names, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of like artists that are Hispanic, especially like sculptors, and I don't know if we're just drawn to that medium or something, but yeah, it there were a lot of sculptors that were Hispanic for sure.
All right, before you go, I'm gonna ask. I don't even know how many rapid fire questions. There's a lot. Okay,
Okay,
so get ready. So first, who's your favorite superhero?
Hulk, without a doubt.
And and then your favorite comic book villain?
Villain from the comic book is a little obscure, but there's a character called Thulsa Doom, and people will know him more from the original Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold
Oh.
Schwarzenegger. He's the guy, the priest who basically morphs into the snake. I thought that played by James Earl Jones.
Oh,
Awesome
and
character.
James Earl Jones too.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome character. I love that villain.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. I have to check that out.
It's a great movie. It holds up.
Yeah, I need to check it. And then, what's the worst action figure sculpting you've ever seen?
Okay, so I have to say it's my own because, like, it's horrifying to look back at some work and you're like, what was I thinking? Like, how did I submit that? And it's not just one. There's a bunch. When you do thousands of figures, you got a few, misses there. And so I can't point out any one, but I would say there's more than just one, and they're all my own work.
Well, I mean, I guess it's good in a way because it shows that you're progressing and developing your skills.
Yeah, and then it's a little like keeps you on your toes because you realize, hey, it's not they're not always winners.
Yeah. And what's your dream commission?
Okay, so right now at this moment, I would love to work on characters for this animation series called Primal. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's an amazing a little mini series. The series, I think, the series two or season two is coming out like the end of the month. It's called Primal, and it's a really awesome. Check it out. I love it, and I would love to make characters for that. If we're talking commercial work.
If you could join one superhero group, which would it be?
I'm almost 50, so I got to be like Expendables, Expendables 5, and then in that group, I'll be the young guy actually. So hey.
Oh wow, really? And then what would your superpower be, I guess?
Well, the power I would love to have, because I love history, is I would love to time travel, and I would love to go not to the future. I would love to go to the past, the distant past. I want to see, how the pyramids were built and things like that. So that's where, if I could choose a power, that's what it would be.
Yeah, that would be pretty badass to see
Right?
that.
You know,
And so now, pick your weapon of choice: either Mjolnir, Captain America's shield, the Green Lantern's power ring, or the lasso of truth.
well, I would say, because of the historical, value of that, the what's the pronunciation of the hammer?
Mjolnir.
Munir. Wow. Yeah, that's. But I would say that because, like, it's a weapon, but it's also this, like sacred, thing, and so I love the idea that this one thing has more of the meaning, and
Yeah, and also there's a mythos behind it because it's a part of
yeah,
Norse mythology, so
yeah,
it has
yeah,
like a whole other story to it too, which is
yeah. And
really
I don't know it all, and I should look into that. But I love the fact that it's based off of the historical thing. It's anything history. I'm all for it.
And is there any Brooklyn-based artists that you're excited about right now?
Yeah, at the moment, I mean, because like all my references are always older, artists and stuff. But I got to shout out my all-time inspiration, Ralph Bakshi. He's from Brownsville. He wasn't born there. I think he was born in Palestine or something. But he's the director for these like awesome animations in the '70s. Most people will know him from like a movie called Cool World with Brad Pitt, where it had live action and animation. But this artist was amazing. He is amazing. He's still alive. He's in his 80s. But I kind of, you know, my personal work is hugely based off of his stuff too, because he made stuff about the streets of Brooklyn, in New York, and I'd like to do the same, with my stuff. But yeah, I don't want to keep dragging on the answer, but there you go. Ralph Bakshi.
Okay. All right, Miguel, I'm going to cut you off now because you go on the whole day with the rapid fire questions. Dave, where can people find you?
Also, the easiest and most current thing, and there's a lot of wacky things on there, but Cortes Studio, and Cortes with an S, of course, and Studio on Instagram. So I don't post daily. I was at a time, but I try to like at least post weekly. And then there's cortezstudio.com that has the archive of all the old work. And then through Cortes Studio, you might find Pugsy.com or Pugsy on Instagram. Like, I have a lot of different things, but it's pretty easy to find through just going to Cortes Studio on Instagram. And you could also find me in Gowanus, Brooklyn. So if you're in the neighborhood and you want to, come visit the studio, reach out, send, DM me. And I'd love to have visitors and, show the studio off, and come by if you're around.
Sounds great. We're definitely going to visit you. So,
I look forward to it.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us here on More Than Rice and Beans. It was so great getting to know you, and maybe we can swap a cooking class for a sculpting class sometime.
Yes, I'd love that. I'd love that.
So
Yeah.
thank you for joining us this week on More Than Rice and Beans, and a special thank you to our amazing guest, Dave Cortes. We have so many other fantastic guests this season, so make sure you're subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people find the podcast and allow us to continue booking this wonderful guest.
And if you're interested in learning how to cook traditional Spanish or Puerto Rican dishes, sign up for a virtual or in-person experience at coquidachef.com.